Okay, folks, this is my very first interview from Bentonville Film Festival. As you all know, I had talked about going. As you can see, I'm in the luxurious confinements of my living room yet again. And yes, I am going to get out of my living room next month. My very first interview is with the creators of Smile or Hug, which is a neat little film, 1 hour and 17 minutes. And I'm here with the creators, both Paul Sprangers and Chelsea Javier, who happen to be a husband and wife team, which is way awesome. You might remember that Michael and I were a team, which is awesome. So thank you guys so much for getting up so early and coming to talk to me. Right out of the gate, I want to talk about something I ask a lot, which is when you're husband and wife and you're working together, we all want to believe it's Shangri-La 24/7. But is it really though? So tell me a bit about that. Like when you're directing and producing and writing together, what's the upside or potential downside to that?
Yeah, totally.
Well, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is like we're both so busy with what we're doing on set that
Mm,
we trust each other to take care of what needs to get done. Like I'm
mhm,
so helping with the technical, I'm directing and with the camera team, and she's working with the actors really. I mean,
mhm.
Sure.
she's producing and right. I
And
mean,
casting and all
yeah.
the we know
So
how to delegate what we do best and
yeah,
not step on each other's toes too
yeah,
much.
it's very natural.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that is to
Wow.
say though, it hasn't always been perfect. I mean, we
No.
definitely argued over a few things during production and the edit.
Yeah.
I don't
And
think anything's ever perfect though with any partnership in filmmaking, probably.
no, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, right. And the thing is, of course, like I know on this particular project, Paul had been directing, right? And so, of course, you're on the other side of the fence. So you're in a lead capacity along with creating it. So I'm like, sometimes are there differences creatively? Because the director doesn't always think the same way that a writer does, or even an actor does. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, I won't say where in the film, but there's one line,
Oh yeah.
one scene that I still when I watch it, I'm like, because we just really
There was an editing. There was
yeah.
like a line she like that got taken out in editing. Yeah, that was
That's not like
one.
the end of the world, but that was
Yeah,
like the biggest
but she's
disagreement.
but she's saying like as far as on production, like
Oh,
would we
okay.
like disagree about wallpaper or
No.
something or
I
like
feel like that we could
or an
always
acting choice?
I don't know. I don't feel like we had any disagreements on those things, but it was just in the edit.
I listen. I may be over to a detriment, but I listen to the actors. I mean, I
Mhm,
listen to everybody. I treat it like I'm trying to take ideas from everybody,
mhm.
and Chelsea's
Sure.
the same way. So we're
Yeah.
very open and collaborative. So I don't really hold on too tightly. I do. I really prepare. We prepare a lot. I storyboard
Mhm.
everything. Everything's very prepared. So like if someone doesn't have an idea, I'm ready to go. But if there's a better idea, then that wins.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I really
Ah,
trust Paul on set. Like if because he trusts his actors so much, if he's telling me like, "Oh, this isn't really working," or "Why don't you try it this way?" then I know like it's a good suggestion, and I'll take it. And he's always right. Like one of the scenes with the kids, I remember like, "Oh, it seems like if you say it in a different tone, it'll feel more friendly," and then
Hmm.
it totally changed the vibe of the scene. And I'm like, "Oh,
Hmm.
thank you." Yeah.
I have to say that that's pretty impressive because most of the time when I talk to a duo that's married or in a relationship together, they're like, "Oh my God, there's some days where I just want to throw something at him across the room, etc." So you want to be on set with these guys because apparently they have it together, which is awesome. Um, now,
Apparently.
Paul, I have some questions for you because I can see you have done directing, editing, cinematography, writing, and there's two things I want to pick your brain about. First of all, you're a musical composer. So talk to me a bit about how you feel music adds to any particular movie. And when I say that, I mean there are some people that truly believe that a good movie is led by a good story. Would you agree with that, or would you say that it needs the ideal music as well?
Well, I think cinema is picture and sound. I mean, and both like our favorite movies, those are done masterfully, right? I mean, music is huge. I mean, I write to music. Music inspires what I write, literally. It gives me a feeling, and that feeling informs what comes out. And Chelsea's a musician too. We were both in bands. So it's really important to both of us. And that score you heard is actually from a guy, Phil Dickey, who I toured with a long time ago. Our bands
Oh my
toured
gosh.
together. And he's this like producing genius.
Mhm.
And he made this little record under a name Dragon and Three with all
Mhm.
these songs. And we were trying to figure out the score, right? Because we had no money. We couldn't really pay real good musicians, except a few songs are from really great musicians we were able to get. They through their
You're
benevolence.
helping
Yeah,
helping us out with our lack of funds.
but he had this whole album full of these amazing songs, and I was listening to them, and I played them for Chelsea. I'm like, this could kind of like, this fits with the movie, like the thematically and musically and the energy. So we really lucked out, like, and he was very gracious, you know, for letting us do that. And then he would actually transpose those big pop kind of electronic pop songs into these, like, he used a classic guitar, like when Chelsea's meeting with Danny Trejo at his you know, out in the mountains trailer, he actually transposed those pop songs into these like quiet kind of like guitar strum. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. So it's pretty cool. Yeah.
On the other side of the fence, I see that you have done VR before. I don't get to talk to a lot of people who deal with or are capable of doing like VR videos and things like that. So tell me a bit about virtual reality and how you see it kind of seeping into the movie industry. Or do you? I mean, I don't see a lot of VR productions. I see a lot of CGI, which I'm guessing CGI is not quite virtual reality, or is it?
I work with like visual effects, definitely. CGI, virtual reality, I don't know. We did a cool experience, the Star Wars experience, where it's like interactive, where you're like running around this room with these goggles on. But it's a good question. I don't know. I don't think we're there yet.
Good.
Yeah.
That's a good thing. I mean,
Yeah.
old fashioned, old school would be really good. We just had a full conversation on CGI the other day, and I'm like, VR is great, CGI is great, but like old school is awesome. Another thing I love about your movie, you know, you've got like the old school looking jeans and then the hippie guy in there. And I'm like, dude, this is like back from the 80s, which is awesome. Well, for people like me that aren't young anymore, I'm like, this is just way cool. But yeah, I wanted to address that. It also says that, I think, on your Vimeo profile, because I was looking at that, or one of your resumes does say that you can do VR videos. So I was like, how cool is that? I don't see a lot of people that can do that. It's very awesome. You're multi-talented, which is cool. Another question for you, Paul. So I see that you do more on the directing and cinematography side than on the writing side. So tell me a bit about the writing side of yourself, meaning, is there one thing or one person that inspires you more so? Or would it be fair to say that you come more alive when you're behind the camera?
I went to UCLA. I got my MFA in screenwriting. Yeah, I'm very inspired by, like, you know, directors who write their own things, like Paul Thomas Anderson, Wes Anderson, Sofia Coppola, Robert Altman, you know, those like greats. So writing, I mean, is the blueprint, you know, and I'm not precious. I don't think, you know, and that is to say, it's a working document. It's constantly changing and you're constantly rewriting on set. So I'm not really precious about writing, but I really also like the form of screenwriting. It's like this haiku. You're trying to write very simply and try to convey these ideas so someone can take it and read it and understand what the vision is for the movie. But yeah, it's constantly being written. Editing is writing, you know, so.
I gotcha. I am curious to ask this question. Was there ever a consideration about someone else being the lead role in this movie? Not to say that it didn't fit well, obviously, but was that ever a thought? Because it's a lot to manage or maintain, right? I mean, there's a lot happening there.
Well, I mean, that was honestly a big discussion when we were going through the rounds, because if people don't know, our film was a part of a competition through Wayfarer Studios, which is Justin Baldoni's production company. They were looking for filmmakers, 5 filmmakers to win 50 grand to make their first feature during COVID, just to set the ground. And we were in the top 10, and then we were in the top whatever, and we had like rounds of interviews, and they potentially talked about having a known lead actor, you know, that lends itself to distribution, gaining an audience, press, lots of things, which is totally understandable and very normal. But I had envisioned myself as the lead. I wrote this part to my skills. I'm a painter, my sensibility, and Paul really had my back on that. And so that was really our line in the sand. And moving forward in the competition, they're like, you could be, or I don't know, we talked about maybe I'd be a supporting role or like a cameo, but I was like, I want to be the lead or we can't move forward in this competition. And that was our line. So I almost thought we weren't going to make it at one point, but thankfully they believed in me and here we are. But yeah, I mean, that was a huge discussion actually, because this is like a nice quirky role. Like there's lots of, you know, great moments, comedic moments. And there's some actresses that do that really well who are bigger names than I am. So yeah,
For now.
For now.
Well, yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, hello, Chelsea, since we're on you, I see that you have done an exorbitant amount of graphic design.
Yeah.
So speaking as someone who can't even draw a stick person, tell me a bit about how graphic design fits into your world, because I could see where that would be your specialty, whereas like acting and writing would be secondary. And more importantly, why are you not doing more animation? I talk to a lot of people who do the creative thing, and animation's a big thing from what I see and hear nowadays.
No, that's a great question. Well, graphic design came into my life because I've been a lifelong artist and a painter. But then when I graduated from college and was broke and couldn't figure out how to make money, like selling art, which, it's kind of a theme in the movie, being a failed artist is based on my
Oh
life.
yeah.
I had to learn graphic design. So I went to YouTube and taught myself. But my degree says art. So I'm like, graphic design, they're kind of the same, sort of. But anyways, yeah, I've done that professionally for many years. I still have a few clients. I freelance, and that's still a part of
Nice.
my life. But it has really been beneficial as an artist for so many reasons. Like I designed our movie poster, for example. Yeah, that was me. And then a lot of the artistic decisions in the film were influenced by design, I think. So it just kind of lends itself to a lot of different areas. Sorry, I feel like I'm forgetting your main question. Was that?
Well, the other thing is that I do find that people that are graphically skilled will
Mhm.
eventually merge into some form of animation, because
Oh,
I'm seeing more and more animated films out there. So I was curious to ask about that.
yeah, I mean, I love animation. What is that movie, Seeing Red? I just
Mhm.
saw, I loved it. I found for myself that has actually stopped me like in progressing in my design career in a lot of areas, because a lot of people have wanted me to know motion graphics, which is
Ah,
kind of like animation in a sense, but I just haven't been as passionate about that as I am filmmaking and like live action and acting. So I feel like my design skills cap at 2D stuff and illustration, but I don't know how to animate. I mean, anything in our film that was related to, I don't know if you'd call it animation, but
Yeah.
like, yeah, the animation, like the sparks and the colors, that was all Paul in After Effects, right?
Yep.
So he knows, if anything, he knows some animation. I don't know any. So
I
he's an
gotcha.
animation guy.
Gotcha.
Anything technical or whatever, yeah, that
Oh,
would
I
be
get that. You bet. Tech
yeah.
stupid right here. Totally, totally get that.
Yeah.
Now,
I don't know any.
in my research, I found that you did teach at one point in time. So, two-part question to that, because A, you're talking to a girl, believe it or not, the one thing that I do enjoy doing that I haven't been able to do forever, and I hate to admit it, but yes, I do paint by number, because again, I have no skill. So I'm like, okay, so what's a good recommendation for someone starting out in terms of how to slowly but surely get better at this besides going to the wine and sip? And then more importantly, can people still attend classes you teach or see any of your artwork in a gallery, etc.?
Wow.
Hey, first of all, Chelsea taught a wine and sip for a little
Oh,
bit.
yes, I've taught many of those. I've
I
taught
like
lots of
it.
art classes, including those. Yep. Yeah. So, what was the first part of the question? Is do I
So
still
it was
teach?
in terms of, are you still teaching, or like can someone take a class with you or even see some of your artwork? Like have you posted it somewhere, or have you done any showings like she did in the movie per se?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I'm not still teaching really anymore. I'd say the end of my teaching career was around when we were shooting the film, because some of my
Okay.
actual students played my students in the film.
Oh,
That from my
nice.
final art class through San Marino School District, where I grew up, I was teaching art classes there as well. So some of my students are in the movie, which is cool. I don't think teaching's really going to be in my future, but I hope gallery shows will be. I've been thinking about like, I've slowly been getting more back into painting, but I kind of took a break from it to focus on other art forms like acting.
Sure.
Right now, I don't have any work up. I took down my personal website related to art, but I'm like, maybe I should start posting again.
Heck
I would love
yeah.
to show my paintings in a gallery at some point in my life. That would be a
Yes.
dream. I would say just don't judge yourself. Like, you should just buy a canvas and whatever medium you're drawn to. So it could be like oil paints, that's like my main, or acrylic or watercolor, and just like try it out without any instruction, like your own instincts first, and just see what it looks like. Even if you think it's bad or ugly, like it's natural to judge yourself. I judge my own art all the time,
Sure.
because you don't have to show anyone. You can make something bad, and then if you're like, wow, I want to learn how to paint a face more realistically, like you can just find classes for anything. So do it by yourself first, and that's what I
Right.
would recommend.
I gotcha. Now, because I'm all about shameless promotion, before we move on to Smile or Hug, I want to ask each of you, as far as Chelsea, on your side of the fence, you're working on a second feature. Where are we at with that?
We're writing a feature together. It's kind of a dark comedy. It's early on. I mean, we have a short film version of it that we want to shoot as a proof of concept this summer. So that's kind of where we're at with that.
Okay, I gotcha.
Yeah.
And then Paul, on your side of the fence, do you have a project outside of Chelsea per se that you're working on, or anything else coming up? Not that this isn't wonderful.
Yeah, I have a Western that I
Mhm.
adapted from a novel by this guy, S. Craig Zoller,
Mhm.
that is pretty wild. It's like unlike anything anyone's ever seen. And so I really want to like pitch that to Taylor Sheridan's company, the guy who like wrote Sicario and, you know, does Yellowstone. And then I have some other scripts. I wrote one that's called Night City Zappers with Chelsea as the lead. And it's like this horror thriller and it takes place over the night. And she's like trying to get her kid back from this evil doctor who operates underneath a roller rink in Minneapolis. And then there's some other, like comedies and stuff. But yeah.
He's got a lot of scripts
Yeah,
going on.
yeah.
That's cool. Very, very cool. I also don't want to forget to ask, you guys are centrally located in LA, yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
So we like to check in with our guests, or at least I like to, and say, hey, you know, it's been a rough 2.5 years. Obviously, we've all been living kind of the same reality, you know, a little bit different in the Midwest. But how did you fare in terms of that, meaning over the last 2.5 years? And how have you seen the movie industry change, at least in your part of the woods? Because I know somewhat about LA, but not
Mhm.
as much as of late.
As far as the industry, my main part in it is as an actor, and I've had everything is pretty much virtual now. So I don't go into the rooms, which has its pros and cons. You know, I save money on gas driving across town, but then you don't have that intimate real life connection with the casting director, or, you know, for auditions, it's all self tapes. And then when you advance, most of my auditions are virtual. So
Okay.
like this. Yeah, I mean, as far as the industry itself, what do you think?
I mean, I'm a writer, and so I like being at home. And you know, we
Ah,
made our movie during it, so we were busy doing that, and I was editing for half a
okay.
year. I mean, but yeah, I mean, you know, our production, I guess, was probably a bubble or a tiny version of what everyone went through. Is like COVID testing
Right.
nonstop. You know, just really being careful,
Yes.
and but you can still get it done. You know, which is the good thing. I think people mostly figured that out, how to do it safely.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
also think, I mean, I don't know for sure, but I think that people, because we were at home and a lot of like the studio things, you know, were shut down, a lot of people were taking matters into their own hands to make like smaller budget projects like
Right.
ourselves, or like, what is that movie with Zendaya where Malcolm and
Oh
Marie, I
yeah.
think they like rented, her and the other actor rented like a mansion or something and just had like a small crew come with
Hmm.
them. And I'm butchering the story because I don't know all the details,
No,
but
that's
I think
okay.
that is something that people have done. Like, okay, what can we do on our own with our own money, even to get our film made? And that's kind of exciting because I think that's the future and projects we want to do. It's like, okay, what can we do from here on our own? And that's what this competition really taught us. It's like, hey, we have almost no money, but we still made this great movie. So
I
yeah.
gotcha. Okay, so let's talk about that great movie called Smile or Hug, as I mentioned. Okay, first of all, I want to talk about the obvious. And this is like the most important question. Are you ready? I've been on your Instagram and all your other social media, and I watch you. So I'm guessing that the bunnies and that the
Mhm.
tortoise are yours and you didn't have to rent
No, they were not rented. They are
them.
our own pets. They're our
Look at that.
family.
It's so cute just looking at these little posts. I'm like, I bet people wouldn't think about this. But believe it or not, filmmakers and actors and writers, I think people don't think you have a real life. You know what I mean? It's just that life.
Mhm.
And I'm like, yeah. I mean, when you're broke and you don't have
Yeah.
Hollywood money, you have to like utilize everything you got. So I kind of figured that. So I was like, okay, definitely have to ask about that. I'm guessing that there's a reason why Paul's not in the movie.
Mhm.
Well, I mean, I will never be in a
He
movie.
doesn't like acting.
Really?
No,
I could have totally seen this.
hell no.
Okay.
I feel like you wouldn't do like a tiny cameo like Quentin Tarantino does in his films,
Right?
future stuff, like just being like a second, like walking by.
I would consider doing a tiny thing like that in someone else's movie if they asked me, like a friend. but I
Ah,
don't need to be.
Very hard to get
I
on
need to
screen.
so you don't want to act with the wife.
Oh,
Okay.
she'd
Well,
out
how
act me.
dare you?
Yeah.
I gotcha. Your story in and of itself centers around a almost 30-year-old woman who goes through a breakup. And I was just mentioning to you folks before we came on that loss, like grief and loss and breakups can be somewhat similar. So you have a bunch, just a mirage of characters that you have in here. So one of my favorites, which I said on social media, Patch is one of them, obviously. Doc Garcia is one of them. Your mother is hilarious.
Yes.
So we have to talk about the casting of this because first of all, I'm in love with Danny Trejo in the best way possible. Like I want to say I'm in love, but he scares me senseless. So please tell me that he doesn't bite or scream at people like in person.
He's so sweet. He's
He's
the nicest
so
guy.
sweet. Is the nicest, gentlest, kindest guy.
Yeah.
Super professional.
So cool, like chatting with our cast and crew and just like acting like a normal guy, even though he's like
Sure.
a huge famous. He's Danny Trejo. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's
I mean,
awesome.
right? So he acts as your mentor of sorts in some regards. So I'm curious to ask you, as far as his particular role, what is it about him that stood out that said, hey, you know what? Let's do him as Doc Garcia versus somebody else.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the role started as like a gentle female therapist, so not even anything related to that. But through the competition, we were paired with an amazing mentor, Jim Burkett, who's a writer, director. I think he's most famously known for Coherence, his like sci-fi film, which is really awesome. Anyways, he challenged us to make that character more interesting because the mentor figure in the film influences Trish so much, my character.
Sure.
And somehow we just like turned it inside out completely from what it originally was in every single way. To like, who would our dream person be for this like strange hermit in the woods who's a painter? And we both were like Danny Trejo because he has that amazing voice that you hear on the tapes.
Oh, yeah.
It's very distinct. And so he was actually like our first choice in our pitch deck. We're like, is there a way he would do this? Do you have anything to add to that?
No, I also think once, we filled out that character with, it is kind of like an amalgamation of like ideas and concepts that helped us a lot in our personal lives, like what we've taken from like books and spiritual teachers and then once that is kind of there, it's like, who's the best person to kind of deliver this, or who's the coolest person?
Well, he's also very spiritual
Yeah,
because
yeah.
he's in recovery. He's like sober,
Right.
and he
Sure.
talks a lot about helping other people. And what did he say to us on set? Something about like everything good that's happened to him in his life has been a direct result of helping other people. And he's like, that's what led to like his entire career was just helping other people. And he helped working on our film for almost no money, like way, way, way under his day rate because he was helping us out. And yeah.
That was going to be my next question, actually. I talked to a filmmaker the other day about, everyone talks about booking a recognizable so as to help the project. But in your particular case, I want to ask this question. I know you had help with the mentor, et cetera, and things like that. But to the filmmaker that might be watching this at some point, what would you recommend to them? Because I'm going to guess that most filmmakers aren't just that comfortable with approaching a recognizable or someone that's a celebrity of sorts. So what would you recommend as far as for the process for putting someone like that in a film? What would you tell someone to do?
Make whatever you can make. I mean, with what you have around you. I mean, this is someone, I take a lot of inspiration from this filmmaker, Robert Rodriguez, who made his
Yeah.
first movie in Mexico, for famously, I think $5,000.
Right.
And he didn't have any famous people in it. He just used his cousin who was from the small town where he knew everybody, so they had access to the town. If you're in Wisconsin, you have access to like a building or a location or farm or wherever, like use what you have accessible to you and then write your story around that. And it'll just add so much production value and things like that can stand out. And eventually, I mean, it'll happen. We made so many shorts and I wrote a ton of scripts. So it just takes time.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all of that. If I can add on, as far as getting a recognizable actor, because that was a goal, especially in our film, because I'm like, okay, if I'm playing the lead role, I want to have at least a few recognizable people, like Andrea Navedo, who plays my mom, is,
Right.
Of course, from Jane the Virgin, and she's an established recognizable actor as well.
Yep.
So between her and Danny, we're like, yeah. But I would say if you have like a mutual, it depends where you live. We live in Los Angeles, so that helped with Danny. But like if you have someone that connects you that might be able to you know, reach out, because if we were to just DM him, he would have never seen it. I'm lucky because another mentor of mine, my acting coach, Anthony Gilardi, is who connected us to
I know him. Oh, gotcha.
agent. I mean, his manager, because he had worked on a music video with Danny Trejo, like I think a few weeks before that. And so he had his manager's email and phone number. And so he was able to vouch for me because he coaches a lot of very recognizable actors. So he's like established, and she trusted him to read the script. And then we got on the phone with her, and it was a very back and forth process. So we really lucked out.
It took a long time. By the way,
It
that's
did.
another thing, tenacity, because
Tenacity.
Right.
everyone was like pretty much ready to give up, and Chelsea was like, no.
I
And
was
we
trying
didn't, Danny
everything.
wasn't confirmed. We had already started shooting, and he was
Mhm.
not confirmed yet. That part was not confirmed for
We're like
anybody.
on
So
set all day.
it was very scary. It was not easy.
It was terrifying.
Yeah, it took a long time. We rewrote the part for him.
Okay.
We changed a lot of lines
Yeah.
to fit his brand or his personality better, and it
Sure.
worked better.
Very cool.
Yeah, giving him
Gotcha.
one-liners that were zappy. That was all Paul.
Now, in terms of the mom, like you mentioned, Andrea plays that part. And I noticed, I mean, for those, I don't want to give too much away, but when you watch the movie, it's very, very obvious that she loves you as far as she can, meaning, I'm going to care about you, but wait, I have a date. But wait, you need to do this. You know, it's very self-indulgent and that sort of good stuff. So we always like to talk about that in terms of what is improv and what is actual envisioned by the director. So was this something where she developed the character, or you developed it for her, or a combination of sorts?
Definitely a combination of sorts. I mean, we had written something on the page, but she just made it so
She
much
got
more
it,
funny.
yeah.
And she brought like the boozy, like kind of like funny character that wasn't there in the script. Like she's like, should I hold a glass of wine? And she was just like, woo. And that was not there. So that was all her bringing it to
That's
the
so cool.
character.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And your story takes place during the pandemic, of course. So you make it very clear that everybody is stuck at home. And what I find so just hilarious and hugely creative is bringing Patches in. Because how many people are going to meet a Patches? You know, Patches is sitting out front, invite you to come have a cocktail, which is obviously what most of us artists will do to begin with.
Yeah.
So how did you find him? And more importantly, I think that Patches really relates to her almost even more so than Doc Garcia does. To be honest with you, I kind of feel like that's her, that literally is her companion through this grief process.
I think so. I love
I
that.
hadn't
Wow,
heard of it.
Robert's gonna love this.
Yeah, and
The
I
actor.
hadn't thought of that actually. Thanks for saying that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I hadn't considered that. That is true. They have a
A
Robert. So
kinship.
Robert
yeah.
Bretanoff.
Robert Bretnoff is a really
Yeah.
talented actor. I'm in a writers group that brings in work every week and then has actors read the work. And he's one of those actors that we met, I don't know, 3 years ago now.
3 or 4 years ago. Yeah.
And so he's been in all our shorts. He's one of those
been in
guys that
everything.
we just put in everything because we love him. He's so good. He's really just a kind person. I don't know what
He
to say.
resembles a biker too, which is way awesome.
Yeah.
Like, dude looks like a
There's lot
biker.
of-
Yeah.
There's a lot of people like that in our real lives. Like my dad, who was also in the film. We'll talk about that after. But that was his vest from growing up. So
Okay.
my parents were like young punk rock parents. And you can catch my dad. He's the guy that gets kicked out of Patch's bar. He's like dressed like a cowboy. He has one line, and then the man sitting with him in that one scene where they're holding up the passes. That's my aunt's boyfriend, Damien. Shout out to Damien. So we use all of our family kind of in this film. But yeah, anyways, it was kind of influenced, at least for me, stylistically by like some of the punk rock people I know.
Yeah.
And I don't know how else you fleshed out that character. How did
I
you?
don't know.
Why did we give him the eye patch? I think he started off as like, again, sort of like the therapist, a more tame version. He was like a
Right.
bartender because originally we wanted to shoot in a bar, but then because of COVID restrictions, we were told we had to shoot outside. And then so we had to think about that as a challenge. And then we're like, oh, a speakeasy that could exist during COVID because all the bars are shut down. People want to drink still. So it's like this bartender turns his backyard into a speakeasy. And it was COVID safe to shoot in. So, or
Right.
shoot
Oh, of
outside.
course. That's what I mean. So as a reviewer, of course, I notice things like this. So I'm like, to me, this is where it stands out. Just like I like the fact that you literally specifically within your story, made it a point to go through each element of the breakup, you know, from sadness to shock to fear to, you know, you've got a million emotions that are going on. And I think literally, instead of like, for instance, those of us who go through grief, somebody will say, here's a book, here's a therapist. You handed yourself a boyfriend doll, so to speak. Literally, you created an actual physical image, which literally was like a pillow of comfort. So I have to ask about the boyfriend pillow, because I literally yesterday was like, I wonder if I should make a Michael, which is so crazy. I was like, oh my God, it sounds nuts, but is it though, really? I almost feel like sometimes we don't know what to do with all those emotions. So we kind of want to personify that and put it into something physical that we can touch or hold that will make it better for us.
Yeah.
Completely. I love that.
Well, I would say I think physicality is a really vital way of connecting with emotions. And sometimes talking and reading just isn't enough. It isn't, but being physical is, at least for me, from my experience, is the best way I've been able to like heal certain emotions and certain traumas and stuff. So yeah, whatever it takes, if there's a physical thing or, you know, you know, screaming, beating, pillows with a bat.
Yeah, getting out emotions, which
Yeah.
is something we learned in this thing we did called the Hoffman process. It's like processing angry emotions. And so he wrote the bat that Doc Garcia is painting with.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Was kind of influenced by that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And I like how you've included outside influences for her to be able to make her own choices. You know, like for instance, you know, the situation with the best friend, which I won't talk about because you don't want to give it away, or the guy that's always running past you all the time. So you're being given these little obstacles in the road, and I like how she finally finds herself. So I guess that's the big thing for me as a reviewer. The one thing I would say is, if you ask me what Smile or Hug is really about, it really is about one woman's journey to find herself, not so much to get over the breakup, but to find out who she is, where she is, what she wants to be, and the fact that she's a lot stronger than she thinks she is. At least that's my take.
Oh man,
that's amazing.
I
wow,
love that. We should
incredible.
say that in every interview now.
Well, you'll be getting the
write that
interview, so you
down.
can just like take
We're
that.
using that as the log line. That's good.
I mean,
That's
it's,
good.
we're like,
but
shout out to
that's,
Cindy.
you know, that's my interpretation. It's hard not to see that. And the sign of good writing is always there when you're able to pick up on those innuendos. I think some of the best writers are ones who don't just throw it in your face. These were very subtle things. I mean, you're using Doc Garcia, you're using other characters. The lead character, you know, Trish, obviously, you really feel for her. You're not really acting. It's almost as if you literally are. I feel like you were literally going through a breakup in this. It's very believable. It's beautifully written, not to mention the fact, all the references, just the old school references. I love the trailer. I love the outdoor guy sitting out there. I love some of the paintings. I would swear you wore peace earrings. They look like them anyways. And I was like, I wonder if that was on purpose. And the jeans. So it almost does really feel like an 80s, 90s, you know, I got me a little school bus and I'm traveling around trying to find myself. So all about like Woodstock, it reminds me of. I don't know why.
Cool.
Oh, I'm so glad that you see that. I mean, we're both very nostalgic, and I feel like our personal styles came into the film a lot. I mean, Paul loves, I mean, I do too, like John Hughes films. That was like one of the influences, and just having like tangible things like the mixtapes, because it could have been like she's streaming them on a phone or something, right? But like, seeing us put the tapes on, it just felt very, I don't know, nostalgic. It was more fun that way.
It's a cassette player, for God's sake. I was like, dude, when was the last time you saw a cassette player? I'm like, I was waiting. I was just waiting for her to like go to an arcade. I'm like, I can't wait to see like Atari and Pac-Man there. And she's like drinking her woes away and all that good stuff. It was like too funny. I don't want to forget. I have to talk about this a little bit because I know that this gets brought up in conversation. Now, Chelsea, you're a Filipina, right? And also within the film, of course, I know that you have an African-American gentleman or female, excuse me, I'm sorry. Where I'm going with this is that you have a bunch of different diversity within your film. And that's so very important nowadays. But this is the question I want to ask you. There are some audience members and even filmmakers that I speak to that almost feel, I don't want to say pressured, but I want you to speak to that, because I truly think that people believe that you're almost kind of forced to have to make your sets more inclusive. But I feel like in this case, or in many cases, it really is a matter of the actor fitting the part. You know what I'm saying? It's not about what they look like or their sexuality. It really is, this meshes well within the movie.
Yes.
That's exactly it. I mean, we're actually lucky because we live in a big city, you know, and our friend group is actually pretty diverse. Like Christian was in the same writers group I was in with Robert.
Christian Henley, who played Sloan.
Sloan is Chelsea's friend. Chelsea found the boyfriend. Ryan.
Alexander Holmes.
And he's mixed. He's Black and Asian.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm a mixed gal as well. I'm like
Right.
mostly Filipina, Italian, but I'm also a little Portuguese. I'm just very mixed. And that was part of, I cast the film myself, and I felt like, I get that pressure all the time too. Like I'll see roles and I'm like, okay, it has to be this or that. But I just wanted to make a sort of rom-com where it's, the people that fit the part well. And it just happened to be a lot of mixed folks like myself, a lot of diverse friends, but it just reflected what our friend groups look like, really. So it was intentional, but it was also natural. It wasn't forced, like, okay, we have to find a Black female to play my best friend, which isn't like good or bad. It was just like we were open, and we really gravitated towards Christian. She's an amazing actress, and I think diversity is important, but if you can make it organically kind of work in your film, that's our
Amen.
approach, kind of.
Absolutely, you betcha. Now, I know that Smiler Hug is obviously available on the virtual pass because most of us have seen it in press, or it's available now. Live, can they see it live?
Hopefully soon. That would be great. We're working on it.
Yeah.
Oh, you don't have another screening, like at
Um,
another festival or another event,
We have
etc.?
a few things coming up, but we
Okay.
haven't announced anything.
Okay, so not to the general public as of yet, as far as that
Not
goes.
yet. Just
Okay,
through BFF Festival right now. You can still buy tickets. Or I don't know when this interview is coming out, so it probably won't.
I
be
was just gonna say, it'll
available.
probably be after the fact, so they
Yeah,
probably
yeah.
can't do that at that point.
Yeah.
But it is available on BentonvilleFilmFestival.org. You're able to go on there and virtually stream it, of course. Do you get feedback like for the virtual people that watch, etc.? Do they give that to you, or do you find out about that? I don't know. That's why I'm
I
asking.
think so. Not that we've heard of, but
Okay,
that would be
I gotcha.
great.
Yeah, I was just curious because I thought, well, I'm sure that there are people raving besides myself, but we'll see.
Just people texting us, like friends, or
Oh, I'm
who we
sure,
know, they're like,
absolutely.
oh, we just watched it, we loved it, or things like that.
Sure. Okay, so before I forget, Paul, I just want to say, Paul, the last name is Sprangers. Let me spell it for everyone. It's Sprangers. He can be found on Instagram, IMDb, and Vimeo and YouTube. And then for lovely little Chelsea, the last name is spelled Javier, and she can be found on IMDb, Twitter, Instagram, and of course, she has a website, imchelseajavier.com. Anywhere else where people can find you?
No, I'll just say it's the letters I and M, because that's confusing.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Sorry about that. I guess I should have
Not
done
that
that.
you said it wrong, but just
I
so
gotcha.
people know.
And
So
don't forget the name of the production, Smile or Hug. As I said, it's 1 hour and 17 minutes of they've taken an absolutely awful experience and turned it into a piece of artwork. So kudos to both of you on that. I would be very shocked if you didn't start seeing all sorts of award-winning this and award-winning that. But to me, obviously you're already award-winning. I know that, but congratulations. And thank you so much for taking time to talk to me. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Cindy.
you so much.
Yeah,
This has
thank
been
you.
fantastic.
Thank you.
Oh
And
my
thanks for
God.
the thoughtful questions and for really watching it. And yeah,